quick introductions. I am Susan, and I am here with the San Francisco Community Managers Meetup, and Molly here is my co-organizer. We can move that microphone. We are also being live streamed right now, so it's on our Facebook page. We'll be tweeting it out, and if you do tweet, the hashtag's octribe, and it will show up here, but the benefit is not only so you guys can see what other people are tweeting, but also for the people watching the live stream on Facebook right now. I work for an organization called TechSoup. It's a technology nonprofit, and our mission is really to bring technology to nonprofits so they can do the good work that they do. This meetup is a pet project, volunteer project of mine and Molly's, and Caravan Studios is the department that I work in at TechSoup, and we do these meetups every month, and they are always free, and they are always at different tech offices, and so you should be a part. If you sign up on Eventbrite and not on the meetup site, then go to meetup.com/community managers in SF. I think I'll tweet it out because then you'll be on our mailing list. Actually, you'll also be on our mailing list if you're on Eventbrite. So that's all I have to say right now. I'm going to pass it off. Anything else? Yes, if you are interested in sponsoring/hosting one of these, let me know, because these are moving events. And the next one in March will be at Hands On Bay Area. Really cool office, really cool organization. Thank you. Panelists would have everyone pass that back and forth.
This one works, right? Yeah. All right, I am Lisbeth. I'm just going to take a minute to introduce Udacity and the topic of tonight's talk, and also myself a little. So Udacity is where lifelong learners come to get the skills they need to land the jobs that they want. And so basically what we offer are nano-degree programs that our students can take to find the jobs that they are hoping to get. So tonight's topic is peer-to-peer communities, and I'll talk a little bit about what we mean by peer-to-peer communities. We were talking a little bit with the group and thinking like, hey, what does that actually mean? And scaling large online communities using that. By peer-to-peer, we're talking about how do we get students, or in our case, students, or community members to really support each other and help each other, and also take leadership roles to do that. So in turn, it's almost as if there are junior community managers really leveraging each other to run that community. And so that's what we're talking about tonight. And in terms of why you would do that, or why you would want to have a peer-to-peer community, it's in instances of like really large online communities. And so we have a few of our panelists here who in particular we thought of and brainstormed together with Susan and Molly and Kathleen to find who can really speak to that topic. And so we'll start our topic today. And I think, I thought Susan was the only one thing, but I guess I'll just start. So let's start with our introduction. All right, we're going to start with Goldie.
Hello everyone, I didn't realize I would be introducing myself, so now I will go through my own introduction slides. Hi everyone, I am Goldie Chan. I am known as hilariously the Oprah of LinkedIn. I have built multiple communities on site, and prior to that I had a decade-long career in digital marketing and community management, community building. And I grew up in the Bay Area but now live in LA, so I always love being back here. Because once a Bay Area girl, always a Bay Area girl. A little bit about me. So I have the longest running daily channel on LinkedIn, and I help run 2 different communities on LinkedIn. One is hashtag LinkedIn Creators. So anytime you see any sort of creative content on LinkedIn, it's usually under that hashtag, and also women on LinkedIn. So encouraging women on LinkedIn to have more of a voice. We all like that. And I also partner with global brands like WeWork, like Skype, like London and Partners, just to talk about marketing, tech, entrepreneurship all around the globe. And I'm such a fan of all those things. Next slide. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do for these 3 slides, so we'll go through them together. So this is my community building content. This is generally what I do in terms of building community in my different communities. One is video tours of the different places I go to, either startups or literally just different places in the world. Another is hosting meetups, similar to this beautiful, amazing one. And then finally, the other thing is panels. Once again, similar, I guess, to this, where I pull together interesting people in whatever place in the world I happen to be at that point in time, because I think one of the best ways to grow community is to spotlight other voices and empower them and allow them to speak, because that is how you truly grow community, is you don't shout at them, you talk with them. Next slide. And in case you want to connect with me, obviously, please connect with me on LinkedIn, because I am on there a whole lot. And I am also on Twitter, tweeting the thoughts, on Instagram, posting the pictures, and on Facebook, because let's be honest, I have to be. Or you can old school email me, so feel free to contact me on any of these 5 contact vehicles. And I'm handing off the microphone.
Hi everyone, my name is Kathleen Hunt and I'm a community manager here at Udacity. I fell into community management sort of by accident. I have a background in education. Before I was with Udacity, I was working at a technical training nonprofit called Meetup, where I led career-focused workshops and helped our graduates find jobs once they completed the program. And I was really interested in how education can scale, because Europe is an amazing program. If you haven't heard of it, definitely check it out. But it is it's an in-person training program, and it was pretty limited in its scope and impact. And I really wanted to learn about how education could be scaled to reach more people around the world who don't have access to programs like that, especially people in rural areas, since those programs tend to be pretty concentrated in the city. And so I knew about Udacity and I heard about the community management role. I was like, that sounds like a really amazing way to continue what I've been doing in terms of building really strong professional networks of students, people trying to make a change in their career, but doing it on a scalable level where it can reach thousands of people all across the country, all across the world. So that's a little bit about my professional background. I also am an introvert, which I think is, I'm really good at playing an extrovert, but I think in community there's a lot of kind of interaction that happens. You're very much on all the time, you're always interacting with people, and so I wanted to share that about myself because I think that it can be a little overwhelming at times, and I've appreciated kind of being able to bring that into my role and using that in connecting to students who might be feeling a little bit intimidated going into a Slack workspace with 15,000, literally 15,000 other people, all posting messages at the same time, interacting with each other. It's a lot. So I think I've been able to bring that into my current role. And just a little bit about me personally, I love DIY stuff. I am just about to start taking a woodworking class. I'm super excited for it. So if you have any experience with that, I would love to hear your tips because I have no clue what I'm doing. Next slide, please. And I see my role at Udacity really doing two things. So one is connecting people, and the other is connecting ideas. So we all know the power of networking. Quick show of hands, how many of you have found a job in your career at some point through a person, through your network? Yeah, okay. People online, you can't see, most people raise their hands. So networks are really important, and so I believe in connecting people because it helps you access opportunities, and I believe in helping people access opportunities. That's why I do what I do. But it's also a really powerful way to connect ideas, and there's people doing amazing things all over the world, and there's so many opportunities for those people to work together and share their ideas and do things together. So those are kind of the two roles that I see fitting into the community manager field as a whole.
I'm Lisbeth, and I'm trying to remember what was on my slides. I'm a community manager at Udacity also, as I just mentioned, and where you can connect with me, LinkedIn is the best place. You can see a great photo of me wearing a Google Glass on my profile. And yeah, my slides, I kind of summarize a couple of examples of of my experience with peer-to-peer and sort of scaling community. And kind of self-sustaining communities. The last company I was at was called IM, and we were an online photography community and platform. And a couple of things that we did there was a global IM adventure. And basically, we had ambassadors, we had meetup toolkits, and one day where everyone around the world celebrated this thing we call it the Global I Am Adventure. And another was a monthly pop-up gallery. And this was just a really great way to have the community actually come together and form that experience themselves. So we brought a printer. Does this sound kind of... Okay. I think I'm getting like a lot of stuff from the monitor over here. We had a printer, and then everyone just brought their photo and printed it, and it became a gallery in itself, an exhibition in itself in that moment. And it was an amazing way to get people to talk to each other at an event. There was actually something that they could physically print out and then start a conversation with. So I just really liked those examples. And the other is our current Udacity community. Here's a quick example of what we're doing to facilitate those relationships. I'm not going to go through everything here, but in short, it sort of infiltrates to everything that we do. Everything that we're doing, all the initiatives that we're planning, the way that we're organizing our community comes with the thought, how are we making these connections? And that's kind of it. Let's see, who's next? Mia.
Hi there, my name is Mia, and I have been a community manager for as long as it's been a job. My most recent stint is at Flipboard, where I am now. I've been there for about 8 years, and I'm the head of curation and community. Flipboard is a content discovery platform where you can follow whatever you're into. You'll get a personalized news feed about articles from all different sources, and then you can save those articles into collections that we call magazines. So the community that I'm really focused on are the curators, who are a really important input into our ecosystem. Before joining Flipboard, I was YouTube's first community manager. So I learned a lot there about how to manage large communities. And I'm also a volunteer at Burning Man, where I am a volunteer on the communications team, helping to cover the activities and art of our community. Next slide. So a couple of projects that I'm really proud of, and hopefully I will cover some of them here. At Flipboard, one of the communities we're focused on is teachers, and we've given them a platform for highlighting great journalism from America's high schools. So this was a way that we gave a lot of voices of our community a platform to shine. When I was at YouTube, we had the inaugural community council, which kind of speaks to one of the core facets of being a community manager, which is like listening to your constituents. So we had a group of about 12 people from around the world who came to YouTube headquarters, and we got them in front of product managers, engineers. We got a lot of the people who were building the product who didn't get out behind their desk. We brought the community to them through that. And then that's just a blog post from the Burning Man blog, where I often poll the community about what, in this case it was like, what is your intention for the burn? And the row of videos is just something from AirBnB, which I just put on here for Emery. We went to AirBnB Open and created a bunch of videos with community members there. And the next slide, you can follow me on Flipboard, of course, where I'm curating about all the things that I'm passionate about. It's music, betterment, parenting, fashion, fitness, etc. And Twitter.
Hey everybody, I'm Emery. So I am the organizing and training manager for AirBnB, which might mean absolutely nothing to you, which is A-okay, because titles kind of mean nothing, and it's really up to you to take your role and decide what it means and what impact you want to have. So I'm going to talk about today Airbnb host clubs, which are Airbnb host-led local organizations. So I've been with Airbnb for almost 5 years now, which is really crazy. But it also, when I say we build and shape what impact our hosts are going to have, it's really in partnership with them. And talk about what does organizing and training really mean. It's about, for me and for my team, it's about how are we supporting our community organizers, which are Airbnb staff all over the world that are engaging with our host community, and how are we supporting our club leaders, which are Airbnb hosts that are leading these organizations on the ground. So if you want to go to the next slide, I'll just set this big, beautiful map is we have over 350 of these host clubs around the world. I'd rather talk about them than myself, just because they're so impressive. But if we talk about who are the people that are engaging with hosts every day, these Airbnb community organizers, they come from a wide array of backgrounds, as I'm sure all of you who are community managers in the room know that you can be from anything as long as you're passionate and you believe in the power of stories to change the world. So some of our folks have started nonprofits or are just deeply embedded in their own communities. Or they come from political organizing backgrounds. So in the US, for instance, I come from a political organizing background, so in the power of tapping the very best people locally and equipping them with the tools to lead their own volunteer movements, you can change the way a political campaign is going as long as you're investing in the local knowledge, which is really what our clubs are all about, is ensuring that we are equipping our local host club leaders with the tools to create the vision for their own community, because they'll always know better than we do. If we go to the next slide. So you can see there, that's a nice little image of a bunch of hosts together, and it's our job to help support them by letting them create their own mission, their own values, and their own agreements, shared agreements, so they can have a unified voice and create a plan together of what they want to do locally. So in some cases, it's political organizing. They want to come together as a united host voice to advocate for what they want out of local short-term rental laws to their elected officials or to community members or to neighborhood associations, or they educate each other on how to be better hosts and better hospitality experts. Or they do volunteerism, where they go out and they say, we want to make our city more beautiful for the people who are coming and joining us. So they go out and they clean the streets and decide really what impact they want to have. And so it's up to us to make sure at Airbnb that we are doing the best job to equip them with the tools to lead locally and also to amplify their stories internally and externally.
Okay.
There was a noise. Yeah.
Jeez. So yeah, with that, thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. With that, we'll start our panel, and to just kind of also sync with everyone in the room and with us again, we're going to do it popcorn style. So that means if the question doesn't speak to you necessarily, you don't have to answer it. And if it really does, go ahead and grab for the mic. But our first question, something that happens when community managers come together is that they realize that the term community manager in their role doesn't necessarily mean the same thing as it does to the next person. And we were talking before this panel started a few days ago, and kind of thinking about that as being kind of our first question for tonight, because it sort of gives that real jumping off point for everything else that we're going to talk about. So yeah, maybe we can start with that.
Sure. So at Flipboard, we kind of think of our users in two broad buckets. So one is as readers and one is as curators. And as I mentioned before, I'm really focused on the curator group. They're both really important to us, but curators are super important because they're what kind of feeds our ecosystem. They're also really great sharers, so they help the Flipboard spread virally. And they are our community leaders, because curation is how you have a voice on Flipboard. So I kind of think of them, so as I said before, my job is to be an evangelist internally and externally for the act and art of curation. So that is kind of showcasing best practices, finding community members who use our platform in a really authentic way, and amplifying them for others to follow. And then I think of within our curators, I kind of divide them up into three buckets. We've got our active curators, who I work with by featuring them, listening to them, involving them in speaking opportunities and things like that. We've got our lapsed curators, who we survey about why they aren't using Flipboard and kind of taking that information back to the team. And then new curators, I'm really working hard to recruit important voices to our platform and featuring them in some of our signature properties, which I'll talk about later.
I can go next. Mic is very intense. I'm going to hold it kind of far from my
No, it's too close, so someone needs to fix that. There's some, I'm not an engineer, I have no idea.
It's this one.
I'm having an issue with the mic.
All right, I'm going to lean forward.
It's because there's through the circle feedback.
Yeah, okay, it's
Turns
okay.
on the bass out, it should fix it.
Yeah. Okay. That's true, I can move my body.
All right, let's all roll in solidarity. There's solidarity.
All right.
We'll all scoot in solidarity.
What does community manager mean in my role? So at Udacity, we have thousands of students learning on our platform at any given time. And so as one person, recently I was managing a scholarship community of 15,000 students, and I was one person. I obviously cannot be an effective support person for 15,000 people. That's just logistically impossible. So for me in my role, I really see community management as empowering, what you were saying, Emery, really spoke to me, empowering the people who are in my community with the tools and the resources they need to shape the communities that they want to see. Also what you said about them knowing best, that is completely true, and different groups of students are going to have different needs. And so my role as a community manager is to set them up with kind of core resources and initiatives and events and campaigns that we know have been really successful. We try to be a pretty data-driven team and look at our numbers, look at where students are going, what events are attracting the most attendees, base it off student feedback, what are they actually asking for, and use that to kind of create the foundation of the base initiatives and events and things that we're offering, and then from there they really take it and shape it into what they want. And so one of the key ways that we do this is through a student leaders program, where students who do want to step up and take more of a leadership role are actually able to do that, and they have, it's not any real power, it's social power in the community to influence what they want to see. And so then, with 100 student leaders, they can much more effectively reach 100 more people each, and then that scales a lot more effectively than just me as one person trying to manage this community, or even on our team of 5 people at Udacity, trying to work with the tens of thousands of students that are learning with us at any given time. Great, so I'm also going to there. I think this is the sweet spot. So I come from a different perspective. So I've been in-house doing community before. This time around, it is odd. So I work very closely with LinkedIn. However, LinkedIn does not pay me to build community. I am just what you would guys call a super fan, right? So I've created communities on my own time, on my own dime, because I believe so much in the community that can exist on LinkedIn, both for women, both for content creators, both for localized, hyper-localized communities that can pop up from LinkedIn. So I have helped build a lot of those communities, and the way I think about my role as essentially a super fan that works closely with the brand, and how they can help me and encourage me is they help me with resources. They help encourage me when I say, hey, I want to put together the first ever LinkedIn Creators Summit, which I did at VidCon this past year. And then I pulled together community members that I knew would not go and be crazy people on stage, because as every single community manager in here knows, there are the crazy people in every single community. Bless them, because sometimes they're loud and they're super advocates, but they're also not necessarily the person you want to hand the microphone to when you're doing an onstage event. And I know this because I've worked in community. And I think one of the interesting things is when you're thinking about, I love talking about myself third person, empowering a super fan as a community manager is to help them get the right resources, and to also, quite frankly, pick the right super fan. Someone who will understand that there are boundaries around what they should say, and also if they tell you private information, I was just at LinkedIn all day yesterday, if they tell you NDA locked information, that you won't go and say it on a panel the next day, right?
that you will be, that superfan will be very, very cognizant of what they are allowed to say and what they're not allowed to say, what will damage the brand and what will help the brand. And that is kind of my very meta explanation of how I manage communities, but also how I'm a superfan and how you can work with superfans to build a stronger community, empower them in the right way, give them information, but also let them know what the boundaries are. So let them know, hey, I'm telling you this, but please don't tell any of our other community members. Or hey, if you want to put on that event, here's the resources we can give you. Here's some other community members we think would be great for you to work with. Yeah.
So, in part, my job is to like find the Goldies. See those Goldies, like the dream, you know? And there aren't a lot of Goldies out there that are just like organically perfect. But I would say yes.
I can't actually snap.
So imperfect. So in a lot of ways, it's how do you take somebody that has all of the like eagerness to lead and take them in, bring them really close, build really deep relationships with them so that you can teach and train them how to lead on their own. Of course, because like the more independent that a group is and a community is like online and offline, the more effective that they're going to be because they're going to feel like they represent their own voice instead of the company's voice or the brand's voice. And the only way to do that is like empower them over time and through like development of these amazing leaders. So in some ways, my job is to work on, and like community manager's role here is to how do you find those like beautiful gems that just need a little bit of training and teaching and time and investment, and then work with them over time so that they can continuously be more autonomous and build their own plans and execute on it, and also like come back to you and say like I need this and now I need this and I want to do this, and like come to us. And when our leaders are like doing that, that's how I know we're like doing it right, because they believe in their own voice and their own collective power. Or they say, do you know that I've talked to the club leaders from all these other states and we all know that you need to change this. And that's how I know we're like doing it right, because they know the power of their own voice, and whether that's talking to like the brand or to their like, you know, city council or to like the state, or writing a letter to, you know, their local newspaper about like the power of the collective, then you know you're doing the right job in community. So that's what I'll say. Mm-hmm.
So actually, that leads really well into one of our other questions. What are the indicators of a healthy community or a quality community? So a community can exist on its own without a community manager. Sometimes it's just a matter of people who identify with each other. But there can be a difference between perhaps a community that isn't healthy and a community that is healthy. And so in your own communities, what are the indicators there?
I'll start. I'd say you need to have leaders, not one single dictator leader, but having like shared leadership where everybody sees their own value and their own role, and they see their own lane is important for a healthy community. That they have a shared value and vision for like what they're working towards. If you're just like sitting in a room like kvetching or like venting, like that's not actually moving anything like forward together, and there's not like that shared purpose or that shared vision, and that you're like moving the needle forward. I think that that's something that's like really important for a healthy community, is that you can see the trajectory together and that you're like taking steps toward that goal, and that it's like beyond just you. That's what I think is really important about health, is that you have a greater impact and that people see it. It's not just like 10 people sitting around a circle, but it's like what is the impact that these 10 people are going to make, and whether it's like on like healthy tourism or, you know, like you can choose anything as long as you are like moving towards something that's like greater than yourself.
At Flipboard, we talk about quality a lot, and so for us, a quality community is kind of synonymous with quality content. And we have always believed that human oversight is like a key part of ensuring that quality. Now, the humans don't necessarily have to be us, but they are our curators, our community. And so, we can't, nor should we see everything that's, flipped into Flipboard. So that's why we rely on our curators, and we've really set the bar high in terms of partnering with top publishers and people who kind of provide these inputs. So in essence, what we're doing is we're curating the curators, and we are taking our top topics such as travel, and we're really boosting the partners and people that are using our platform in the most authentic way. And we found that that's how you scale quality, is by trusting your top users, your power users, and kind of plugging them into the system where it matters the most.
I think community can be a little bit tricky, and this probably is a little bit different for you, Goldie, but I think when you're working in community for a company, the company has its goals, but the community's goals, it's among themselves, might not necessarily align with the company's goals. And so, I think as a company, Udacity wants to see thriving, active student communities. They want to see people graduating. They want to see people posting on social media. They want to get that great word of mouth marketing. They want students to be happy and sharing that, and for that to be really public, which all makes sense. And we want that too. We also want the students to be able to dictate what they want for themselves and what their goals are. And so recently, I'm working in a community right now, and their coursework has just gotten really rigorous, and people are super focused on studying and finishing their projects, and they're not super active in the community right now. And right now, their goals are to study and graduate from their nano degrees. And so the community was super vibrant in the beginning and really active and exciting, and exactly what you think you would want for a community. And then as it evolved, the needs of the community changed. And so I think at first I started panicking, because I was like, oh my God, my community, it's failing, it's so unhealthy, no one's interacting, people aren't showing up to these study sessions. And then when I started talking to people in the community, they're saying, no, we're good, we just, we have what we need, I have my study buddy or two, we DM with each other, we use Slack. And we don't really need anything else right now, like we're doing well, and they are progressing, everyone seems pretty good and okay. So I think the definition of what a healthy community is depends a lot on what the community wants it to be. And there is sometimes that push and pull between the community needs and the company needs. And that's just kind of a challenge that I've been navigating. And yeah, it's been interesting.
And I super, super love that you just talked about that. So as an unofficial ambassador / liaison behind the entire creative community on LinkedIn, the entire active want to create small networking groups community on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn as a corporation, it is really tough being that in-between person, because I understand completely what LinkedIn wants to do as a company, right, and their goals there. And then I get to also hear directly from the community that I'm part of, oh my gosh, literally like fix this bug today. And I have to remind people I don't actually work at LinkedIn. But when you're that in-between person, you do get to hear some interesting trends. And I think that's why, once again, it's important to talk to some of your super fans, some of the people who are very active in your community, who are healthy and active, and to ask them what those trends are that are coming up, right? And if there is something big happening and big brewing in the community, like being very busy or not having time to participate or caring about their local government, to ask those people to give you more feedback in terms of what you should be focusing on. And I think that's part of that, is just surveying the community, but having a few key people that you can survey directly from is really, really important. But yes, the goals of the company versus the goals of the community, it's finding that bridge between the two of them that I think is really, can be really tough at times, and you can understand your community totally and what their goals are. And sometimes, I hate to be this person, you cannot give your community what they want, because it does not necessarily make a healthy, happy community. Because, just like in dating, sometimes what people say they want isn't what they actually need.
And the community doesn't have to be happy to be healthy. Oh yeah, the one thing, yeah, you don't have to, I would say that like you don't have to be a happy community to be a healthy community when there's like active discourse and people are like challenging each other. And I think it is what like brings it together for health, is to say like I can be like my honest, authentic, genuine self and show up in a space vulnerably and like with people you don't know, and building those like very genuine connections that don't have to be like pure joy and euphoria are like important and like worth noting also, I'd say. And like the more diverse of a community you have, the healthier your community will be, because it's going to be stronger, because all of those voices are going to make a better impact.
Awesome. So I'm not actually going to get to a question that I think probably a lot of people here are interested in hearing. The actual pitfalls and triumphs that you've hit in pursuing either a healthy community or maybe just an active community, based on what we just talked about. Maybe something that stands out in your mind.
Sure. I learned a big lesson at YouTube of not listening to your community when we rolled out a channel redesign. So a channel on YouTube is kind of your identity. And we didn't realize how personal that was for people. And so when we rolled it out, we started to get like a pretty big backlash in terms of people who felt like we just had changed their stuff without any proper preparation. So we quickly regrouped, and the next time we attempted to make this pretty big product change, we were a lot more hands-on. We had a war room, we were responding to people on social. We learned so much about the importance of like being transparent, taking ownership, and learning from your mistakes. So that was a hard lesson, but that's something that I learned. And then a triumph is something that I'd like to go back to teachers and how we work with teachers at Flipboard. We noticed that teachers were they were an organic group on Flipboard, and we kind of cultivated that group in real life and online. We had dinners adjacent to conferences. We featured them. We really did a lot of like one-on-one work with them. And fast forward to about a year later, and I remember at South by Southwest EDU, there were at least 4 teachers who are incorporating kind of Flipboard into their presentations. And again, that was a great lesson for us in how to scale community. Like we didn't have to go to South by Southwest to talk about Flipboard, and plus it was more authentic when it came from our community itself.
No, you don't need that. This is such a community manager thing to do. Okay, I will start with a pitfall failure that happened while I was in-house, because those are the best stories, really, at a company that shall go unnamed. They brought me on board after a big R-word failure, the R-word being Reddit. Honestly, for every community manager out there, I don't know how Reddit doesn't give you the chills whenever you hear it. And a Reddit AMA, I think sometimes is the most terrifying thing of all to watch as a community manager, because it either goes very well, like amazingly well, or it goes the other way. So they brought me on board after it went the other way. So my first couple of weeks on the job was navigating a furious, not only direct community, but an outside global world that was like, you guys are idiots, you shouldn't have said X, Y, Z, and they're tearing apart this entire Reddit thread. Now, how do you fix that, right? How do you fix a furious, because we've all been there at some point, or if you haven't, you're going there. If you want a career in community management, at some point you're going to have a furious community. You're going to say something quote unquote wrong, which as community managers, there's never a right or wrong. But you're going to say something that's wrong to the community. How do you get through that? And I feel like one of the things that I worked on with the team was, number one, we just apologized, just like you said. We apologized. We said we were wrong, because that's what they wanted to hear. So we said we were wrong. And then we said, okay, we are going to fix this. And we actually took steps, and this is the most important part, to fix it. We didn't just say we would fix it, we did action. And I think that's the most important thing you can get your company behind to do when you make a big boo-boo, is to actually do action behind the I'm going to fix it. Because anyone can say that they're going to fix it, but the people who actually fix it are few and far between. And I think that's just a general, really terrible trash fire lesson I learned from that particular role, which is if you do fix it, even 5%, the community will start to slowly come back to you. And they might not be happy, but they will be a little healthier, right? And I think one of the most wonderful things recently that's happened is, so I'm helping really run all of these creative communities, and I get to travel and meet them in person, and it has been so wonderful to me personally to see how empowered other content creators are who are deaf, who are people of color, who are women, in different communities where they're not encouraged to have a voice, where they are now encouraged to have a voice because they can create content, ironically, on LinkedIn, and make videos on LinkedIn, and make text posts on LinkedIn, which is not the kind of warm and fuzzy platform you think of when you think about content creation, but it's starting to give a lot of people a voice. And I think that's really the most amazing and validating part of helping run a community, is when one person comes up to you and is like, your platform, or for me, the platform that I help out, your platform gives me a voice. I think that's the best compliment you could ever get, is that they feel heard.
I can also do that. Next question. Okay. So how does the community itself inform your goals? So I think we have touched on this a bit. Does that stir up anything? Otherwise, I can go to the next one.
Give a specific example.
Okay. Yeah. Let's do that.
All right. So
repeat the question.
how does community inform my goals? Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned this before. I come, whenever there's a group of students, I think we come in with kind of a set plan of, the base activities that we want to do and events and initiatives that we know work, but with a lot of room for flexibility. And so a specific example that comes to mind is a community that I was managing last year. It had 15,000 students in it, and they really wanted to do a hackathon. And I do not have a technical background. I do not have access to enough technical resources where I could support a hackathon for 15,000 people, and it just was not a realistic ask. But they were really excited about it. They really wanted to do it. And so in my head, I'm thinking, okay, how can I make this happen for them without me actually having to do it? And so I put it back on the students, and I said, why don't you ask people in the community who can be judges, because I can't be a judge. And they're like, okay, yeah, we can do that. And so they promoted it to the community. I was able to make the announcements and put it in emails and things like that, so it was going out to the entire community. But it was completely a student-led initiative. It's not something that I planned ahead of time. It was done completely in response to what the students were asking for. And I would say all in all, it probably took me, I would say there were 2 hours of my time total to facilitate this amazing thing happening. But there were over 400 people participated. There were 150 different groups. People were so engaged. Social media was exploding. People were really excited about it. And it was just an awesome initiative, an event that took really no time for me to do as a community manager. So things like that, I think giving flexibility to your communities and being open to allowing them to take the lead on things is a really great way to have awesome things come up that you couldn't possibly do on your own.
Great. So we're going to do our last question, and then we'll open it up to questions to the audience. So our last one is there a latest program or a latest learning or takeaway that really jumps out at you right now that you'd like to share?
Yes. All right. This is something I actually did a video on LinkedIn. It did quite well, which is don't take trolls personally. So the best part about being your own personal brand with your own community is that when people attack a brand, right, when they said, I hate X brand, Goldie, you work for it, it was okay because it wasn't me. So now I get trolls that are like, I hate you, Goldie, the brand. And I think one of the things I was able to do as a community manager was not take it personally, and now that it's quite literally me as a brand they're attacking, I find that really fascinating. And through, you know, some really good book reading, I am able to not take it personally, and that is such an important recent takeaway for me, which is when the trolls come after you, which sometimes they really do come after community managers personally, which is scary and it happens, to not take it personally, because it's actually not about you. It's about their own frustration. And that's what's happening, is frustration is being vented. So to not ever, ever take trolls personally, even if they attack you personally, it's never you, it's them. So that was my biggest takeaway.
I'll say, okay, in terms of like the practice of like being an organizer, and I like take that role like very seriously internally. Like I see myself as just like I'm teaching and training this like next generation of organizers who, and host-wise, are like often older women, which is pretty amazing that this is like the next generation, it feels like, of organizers in a lot of ways. Like I feel like I'm an organizer constantly internally, like ensuring that I'm tapping the people and getting them around the vision of what I need to get done, and trying to like bring them together around that vision, and tapping people's like skills and talents to like make that thing happen. That's for our hosts. That maybe has nothing to do with like their product goals, but they see that as something that's like bigger than them. Is like something that I'm constantly learning how to do better. And then also just like looking at the people that we are teaching and training how to lead locally. It's never constrained or confined to like that community. And I think it's important to like flex that and to show your community members that it have to be for that mission or always like for that brand or that purpose, that those skills to organize and bring people together and that like collective power is useful in all spectrums of our world. And right now, I think especially in this like moment in time in politics and in our culture, the more we can do to connect with like through our passions and through our shared values beyond just like the identities that we hold closest to us is really important. And I think as a community manager, whether you're working for a brand or yourself, how you can like tap into that will have a help in that ripple effect will go way beyond your brand and that local community.
I think it's really important to celebrate your community, and so one new project that we have going on right now is I curate something called The Culturist, which is a culture destination. And because Flipboard is a content platform, we kind of map a lot of our community initiatives to content and to our editorial calendar. So now we're using community thinking for acquisition for curators to contribute to some of our signature programs. So one example is for Black History Month. We've got a curator out of New York called Mike Tom, who also has an SMS culture recommendation company called the Culture LP. And he curated a fantastic collection called Futura Noir, Black Artists to Watch in 2019 and beyond. And so we celebrate curators like that by plugging them into these programs, which we then support like a full core press push notification.
Sorry, let's switch on to darling.
We support them with every tool that we have in our kit when we do collaborate, give them a platform.
I think I hesitate to call it a project, so it's kind of bigger than that. It's kind of like an overhaul. So Udacity recently shifted its model. So if you are familiar with Udacity, if you've learned with us before, I definitely encourage you to check it out. Because I'm really excited about the changes that are happening on the student experience side. And so I think prior community was kind of like almost more of like a supplemental thing to mentorship and learning. And I think under this new model, community is going to be a lot more integrated, working a lot more closely with mentors, a lot more closely with the content team and with and the student success team and the different teams at Udacity to create kind of this really robust, cohesive experience that builds community into the learning experience from the very beginning and ties it into careers and outcomes and professional networking and all that, which I think is a much more realistic way to view community, because we all have communities in our lives and that help us when we're job searching and when we need support and when we need help through hard times, and we see that in our student community, so it's just really exciting to see that kind of being folded into the overall student learning journey, so I'm really excited about that.
I have a question for the panelists. I can just project. I actually wanted to know from Emery, you talked about finding the Goldies. So with Airbnb, how do you find the Goldies? That was really interesting to me.
Yeah, so.
And what do you do once you find them?
Oh.
We're getting really close and comfortable now.
So how do you find the Goldies? Part of it is like having meetups. So having like an event here where you're inviting often it's like the super hosts, so the people who are the ones who have the highest reviews and host the most often. Those are people that are like have the highest propensity to be a Goldie, but that doesn't mean anything. It just like means they're more likely to be someone who's like wants to give their time and their energy, because like none of our leaders are like compensated. It's only based on like their own desire to lead and their eagerness to bring people together in this way. And so often it's super hosts, but it's also just like anybody who feels, we found that like finding the Goldies means the people who see like being a host as part of their identity, and they're like, I'm not just like, this is like who I am now. And it's people who have found like a new sense of self through hosting, are the people who are going to be so driven to bring people together in their living room, or to pay for a night out at a local bar to bring new hosts together, and to like bring in experts. And they're the people who are like so invested, and it started way before they were like leading the community. It came from like, what did hosting mean to them? Like really intrinsically, because the people who are driven by like the bottom line are very unlikely to be the same person who's like, I would love to bring everybody together. So just an interesting learning. But it's also about like who is the person who's organizing, because I think it's also that I think it's part of like human nature a little bit, is like it's easier to connect with people that are like you. So often you see that like sometimes organizers are going to be drawn to hosts or leaders that are like them, whether like in personality or in identity or demographics or any of those reasons, which is like why it's so important to hire a diverse workplace, because the more diverse your workplace, the more diverse your hosts will be, and the more diverse your leaders will be, and the more diverse your orgs will be. So,
Hi. So my name is Puneet, and my company is called Wow50. We're building co-living spaces and co-working spaces for adults 50 plus.
cool.
And we've always faced the challenge of building community, as our first go-to move was Slack, and we didn't succeed at Slack at all. So then we moved to Facebook, which was somewhat successful, but not to the extent that we were convinced. So what are some ideas where we can build a community for a non-techie generation, which is adapting, but still not at that pace which we are? And at the same time, how do you make sure they're engaged? Like, we don't want them to just sign up and not be involved. So what are some tips and advice that I would love to?
Yeah, I'd say spend a lot of time with them. Spend time with them, like how do they use technology? How do they connect with their friends and their family? Because it's so much better to like meet them where they're at instead of trying to like force them, which is something we all deal with like often, which is like, where is the right online space? Because like we created our like a separate platform connected like to Airbnb that was like very much like led by like our platform that we like designed and created, but people weren't like some of our people weren't using it, so it was like, okay, maybe we should transition to like a new way of doing things. Well, Facebook, everybody's on Facebook, great, let's like migrate to Facebook. but it's also like just so important you spend time with your people, because if they're not on Facebook and that's not their way of being, then it's like you're not like doing the best to service them. And community should always be like in service to your people. So I'd say like just spend some quality time with the people that you want to be your leaders. The people that you're like, wow, you hold all the values that like we believe in, that we want to push forward, and then just like see how they do it and what they need and what they're asking for. That's my just like the perfect answer.
I would only add if sometimes, I mean, there's never going to be one platform that works for everybody, and so if there's a division in, you know, what people want and what people need, and you have the bandwidth to have multiple ways that you communicate with people, you know, maybe trying out a couple different things and picking the top 2 or 3 that people like, and if you have the capacity to manage those actively, as long as you don't physically need everybody to be in the same place interacting together all at once, then having different platforms to do it on can be helpful too.
So just to add on to that, just because LinkedIn is a slightly older platform, which, you know, is very cool and sexy, when you're trying to get to the slightly older audience, sometimes, this is not popular to say because everyone in here is online, go offline. Go offline. Host in-person meetups. Travel to physically where they are, because with older people who are not tech savvy, putting that caveat behind it, aka not in the Bay Area, they want you to meet them where they are, but if you meet them where they are, they will remember you. They will definitely remember you, and they will be much more excited about your product. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
In terms of, okay, yes. So offline is like how you build those like deep, authentic, genuine relationships. Online is a great way just to make it accessible to people, especially like in remote communities. Like we're so used to this, like the urban center of like, you know, it's like a 15-minute lift or like BART ride anywhere you need to go. But like when you're looking at like rural states in the U.S., like just being able to like feel connected to like your local community. They might be like farms and farms away, but to feel like that's somebody who like knows me better because they're from like my area. But if it's like a home living space, that should be even easier to build those deep home connections. And lastly, I'd say like stay flexible. I think is really important, is not take it personal, but also know that like it's not about you, and if it's not working and they don't like Facebook, like that's okay. Try again. And the more you try and the more you say, I want to meet you where you're at, I want to make it easier for you, the more your community will care and be like, oh, he's trying so hard. Yeah, which goes a long way.
Okay, so
Sure. So we had a question. Yeah.
So I feel like you guys are like, you guys make magic happen, but I just don't know how. Like if I was to follow you, what does your day life look like if you were to highlight a day? I would love to hear from each one of you.
Day in the life, man. Love that. So
Well, I'm constantly kind of monitoring the health, the quality of our community, and I'm constantly looking to grow that community. So right now I'm in the process of putting together a curator database, and I'm starting to see where there are holes in our community, and I'm also looking at data of what people read and share on Flipboard, and recipes are one of the most shared types of content on Flipboard, so we know that the food community is something that we need to develop. So think a lot about that, and then I also do like a lot of celebrating, which in my case is featuring inside of our app, on social, always looking for those great community leaders who we can bear hug and help tell their stories so that others start to emulate their behavior.
So every day, I would say day-to-day varies, but every day in the morning I do my best. We use Slack as our main mode of communication. I try to check my Slack DMs and make sure that no fires need to be put out and that there's no emergencies. I don't always respond to every single DM right away, but at least check those. I try to devote a little bit of time to being active in Slack every day, even if it's just like reacting with an emoji to things that people post, just so they see me in the community and know that I'm there. And
But yeah, other days, I mean, the other day we led a webinar, which causes me like more anxiety. That I hate webinars more than anything else in the world. Or we'll do events. We'll have guest speakers come in. You know, some days it's a lot more about like strategic planning and you know, getting initiatives ready to be rolled out, or working with our communications team to make sure that email communications look good. So it really depends on the day, but I would say like the one consistent thing is just making time every day to just check on my community, see how they're doing, make sure everyone's okay, and then you know, maybe taking a step back to do more strategic work. And I usually mute Slack for that because I find it to be extremely overwhelming and I can't do my job when I have Slack on in the background.
So I like to say that
we keep scooting closer and closer. Is that just me?
I like to think of my role often as like a human switchboard. So there's all of these people at headquarters, but then there's all the people who are actually doing a lot of the work out in the field. And so it's making sure that whatever's happening in headquarters with the team is plugged right into the right person in the field. So I do a lot of just like connecting people, or, you know, somebody has a brilliant idea and they're like, they come to me and they're like, oh, I have this great idea. And then I'm like, I know who you should talk to, like switchboard it up to like someone in another region. But also it's like, just how we're saying, we like, how do you put the power into your users and empower them to lead? It's the same thing with like employees in the field. It's like, if you are holding the information or the knowledge or like the resources, you need to get that off your plate and out of your desk and out of your inbox and empower to like your employees out in the field who are like doing it, because the more knowledge they have, the better they're going to be at their jobs, the more they're going to feel, of course, like included and activated. So it's really just about like getting that information out from me. And like we always like say in organizing, like if you can organize yourself out of the job, then you're doing it right. So something to like, no one should be depending on you to make it all the trains run. So yes, we're magic, but the magic should happen without you because you've done such a good job empowering the like brilliant gems out there.
So the opposite of that is what I do. So I also run a marketing agency. I don't sleep a lot, and well, I won't talk about that. But on the community building side, I actually taught the official like LinkedIn, how to make a video course on LinkedIn. And part of that, I said, if you ever make a video on LinkedIn, to tag me in it and to use XYZ hashtag that I won't say right now. And I will try personally to comment on your video, on your content as a first-time creator, because I believe getting that emoji, getting that first comment encourages community building in such a big way, because most people don't get that first comment. It's really scary creating content for the first time on any platform. So I spend a lot of time looking at other people's content, commenting, engaging. I meet when I host meetups, when I host different things. A lot of people ask me to shoot their first video with me or do their first piece of content, which I am always, always happy to do, because it pulls on and brings on a new creator, like a new community person. And then suddenly our community is so much bigger and broader. It makes everyone happier. And it's those, I think, manual pieces of showing appreciation that can grow a community in a crazy way. Me going and talking to 5 people and shooting 5 videos in one day, those 5 video creators suddenly in their own network create 50 new video creators. And it's really lovely to see how a simple emoji, my personal emoji on LinkedIn, in case you're wondering, is a green heart emoji. How when I comment with a green heart, I've had people quote me commenting a green heart in their keynotes, like, wow, Goldie like put a green heart on my content, and then I made 50 more videos. I'm like, wow, like I wish I had more time to just spam everyone with emojis, because I don't actually have my team do that. That's just all me, because I believe firmly in this. If you do it yourself, it's so much more authentic, and your community can tell when you yourself are involved and you care and you're commenting and you're putting your own authentic self into it. The community responds by being like, wow, you're so busy, but you took time out to switchboard me to the right person, to just put an emoji to just make sure that I feel acknowledged. I think that is one of the most powerful things you can do with a community that's so small, and every single person in this room can do it, because that doesn't require a budget. And that's what I'll do it.
We have time for, well, there's 3, so that's it. After these 3, then we're done. Quick questions. No, go ahead. Actually, David must know next to me. Go ahead.
Sorry, Ray.
He got
That's
cut
a
off.
good time. That's all the answers. So. I'm curious if you could share like the top 1 or 2 metrics that your organizations care most about in the community.
Graduation.
Could you clarify?
Yes, the percentage of our students who are finishing their nano degree program, submitting all of their projects, and going through the graduation process. Usually it's 4 months of learning at about 10 hours a week. So yeah, part-time, but still a substantial, challenging commitment.
For curators, we look at how many magazines are created and the engagement and activity in those magazines. And then we also look at daily active readers, we look at time spent, and we look at something called batting average, which is items read over items displayed, if that makes sense.
A lot of what I do is try to prove that like these clubs could be the container for any goal. Like it can be forever shifting, and local teams can set it and decide depending on like what goals are at that time, how can we partner with our community to execute on that. And so it's changed a lot over time. So like in 2014, what our goals look like and like what success looked like in terms of like just my little corner of Airbnb, it's very much has been shifting over time, and it's always about proving and showing that these clubs can be a container for what the community wants and what local teams want, depending on like any given moment. So it's like it can shift and change and be flexible as long as you empower the right people and like drive with values.
I totally don't work for a company, so I will give you my KPI, which is the number of new people, number of new creators, active creators that I can bring onto the platform or encourage on the platform, but also just how engaged they are now with their own networks. And that I count pretty significantly when I see if they are starting to comment more on other people's content, they start to be really involved, they start to host their own meetups. That to me is also a very important metric.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a question for Goldie on LinkedIn. So what are the biggest challenges of creating and maintaining and generating community on LinkedIn? And what do you have to work especially hard at to make it successful? Because LinkedIn generally is not regarded as the greatest platform for community creation.
And I don't know that that's necessarily untrue, right? I do know that LinkedIn itself is putting in quite a bit more resources into LinkedIn groups. So over the past couple of months, they've relaunched LinkedIn groups. Now if you post on LinkedIn groups, some of that content will actually, oh my gosh, go into your feed. So people will actually see what's being posted in LinkedIn groups instead of it going into that hole that nobody ever sees and then is completely useless to community managers. So LinkedIn groups are getting a little bit of an internal push for sure. And building a community on LinkedIn is so interesting because there isn't Facebook groups, which makes a very clean and easily understood community. Community on LinkedIn is literally a bunch of people who know each other and we all use the same hashtag, how old school, and that is how we find each other, and also in-person meetups now. So in Switzerland, I'm gonna get the country right, they actually do these LinkedIn luncheons, which are so cute because the Swiss are adorable. And they all know that LinkedIn luncheons happen all the time, so they know each other and they know that they'll self-organize these LinkedIn luncheons. And this is completely independent of LinkedIn too. So this is just something they just know to look for, hashtag LinkedIn luncheons. They know to sign up onto a site that they've independently created and organized to literally go meet for lunch to talk about LinkedIn in Switzerland.
Hi. I was wondering, especially since you've mentioned that situations you might have been the only person in your team. You might have had to manage thousands or 10,000 of people or members or community members. So considering the workload that you might have in a day, how do you choose to automate your work? And what are the areas that you wouldn't kind of touch using like an automation tool, or if you can like share some of the automation tools, share the use cases where you actually need them, and the areas where you wouldn't go with automation, just because you want to increase the authenticity.
I think a really good thing, so even when I've been solo managing a community, I've always worked on a team of other community managers, of really awesome community managers. So I will say, I think that we all lean on each other for support, even when we have our own little areas that we're working on, which definitely makes it's very different than being the only community manager doing what you do. That's a huge piece. And I think, there are a lot of great tools that automate things. A lot of them cost money, and so that has been a barrier. So I think I've been limited in what I've really been able to take advantage of. So I really rely on my community to be my tool of automation and just putting the work on the students a lot. And that also serves a dual purpose of giving them more power and say in how things are shaped. So I know humans are the opposite of automating things, but it automates my job, which is great. And what was the other part of your question? What I say no to. I think about, is this going to, when things are overwhelmed, I start questioning which initiatives are going to serve the greatest number of people. And I prefer to go quality over quantity, but sometimes it's hard to know what's going to have the greatest quality. And so I look for things that are going to impact the most people. And so there have been times where students have wanted support with initiatives that were really only going to serve a pretty small subset of them. And so I've pushed them to try to think of ways where they can include more people or run the idea themselves. That way it doesn't take up my bandwidth, so I can focus on things that are going to touch as many people as possible.
I think that's where your power users can come in. Like if you empower them with knowledge and tips and the inside scoop, then they can take care of like fanning that out to the rest of the community. And I've also seen this work really well in support, where you can create a knowledge base of typical questions and answers, as well as community members answering other community members' questions in support forums, and I've seen that work really well at YouTube.
I think it's a lot about like the channel, and depending on like the ask you have. So sometimes like a text message is the best move, sometimes a phone call is the best move, sometimes it's a lunch, sometimes it's at a meetup, sometimes it's an email. And in terms of like, I think of automation often as like just the more efficient way to do it. And so sometimes the more efficient way to make the ask is also the more efficient way to like deliver on that ask, and you're doing them a service by not taking time from their lives, by just being like, just say yes or no to this, or send me your story in 2 sentences, you know? And that's like a really good way to think about like the ask and the like delivering of the ask. Whereas sometimes you really want to make sure that this is like feels as human as possible, because if you have a big ask, you want to make sure that they understand that you're like coming to them like person to person. You understand that there's like a risk involved in like an ask maybe, and that's where you like never ever want to rely on automation. So I think it's depending on like how big the ask is.
Yeah, no, I have 2 mics. So that wraps it up for tonight. Thank you everyone for coming, and we're gonna spend, I'm not sure exactly what time it is, but
It's 8:20, so.
8:20, okay. Well, let's spend our remaining time here. I think it's like 8:30, but we can also swing around the corner if you want to continue the conversation. I think we had said, I'm trying to remember.
What, the name of the bar?
Yes.
I don't know the name of the bar.
I'll share it with you when I figure it out. But thank you again, and thank you to our panelists. It was amazing to witness.